what we're going to do, we're going to have a look at rendering an exterior scene using Shaderlight. Now, interiors and exteriors use a sort of different set of techniques, and we're going to look at some of the basics, look at the understanding of it, the different lighting environments that we can actually sort of use, and what they actually mean to your renders as well. So, using the different environments, the different HDRs that are set up, and I'm going to explain sort of what they are as we go through, and just some of the different techniques, looking at glass and, how ultimately you can control that in your render as well. Also, the replace me function. Now, this is something that has been very popular since we introduced this, and it's something that can cause a little bit of confusion, and just looking at that as we go through, it's a really powerful tool when using like trees and people and cars. So, this particular image here, this has come from one of our users, Daniel Tal, who does a lot of landscaping, and really those trees are detailed trees, and in SketchUp that does generally can cause a bit of a problem. So what we're going to do, let's sort of have a look there. Okay, so I've got this scene here, and it's just sort of a garden scene, so we'll just have a look round, and we've got some of the trees and plants, and these are all from Dynascape. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with Dynascape, but they have a number of packs available and highly detailed trees and plants that you can use in your model when you're actually rendering. Now, if we have a look at our render window here, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to say always on top. This means that it's quite a useful one, that if you are using a single screen, it's not going to keep going behind SketchUp when I work in SketchUp here as well. So if I look in our render settings here, and I'm going to see how this is set up, and we're just, nice simple resolution here, just so I get sort of the feedback happening nice and quickly in our render window. And also with the quality as well. Again, I mentioned this in sort of most webinars, but it's sort of working through the workflow is quite important, that while you're getting the interactive rendering, and if I move my model around here, we get those updates quickly because I'm working in the lower resolution and the lower quality. It is of course very tempting to say, well, I'd like to work in a nice high resolution quality, put the slider right up, but it's just keeping it there so I get that feedback nice and quickly. Now, we're rendering in exterior mode, and at the moment my lighting, I've got lighting preset here, but I'm going to start with the SketchUp sunlight. Now, there was a subtle change there, and just going to go back to my view. Now, first off, the SketchUp sunlight, and this is the one you see when you're working in your shadows menu in SketchUp. Now, we're working in here using all of these settings. So at the moment there's no shadows turned on. So if I turn the shadows on, there we go, we can now see we get the shadows underneath here. If I change the time of day, the shadow positions change as well in Shaderlight there. So we've got those options, and if I go to the end of the day, so we get the long shadows down the side of the building. Now, the SketchUp sunlight system, yeah, it's a great system working with the times, but in Shaderlight and in SketchUp, the SketchUp sunlight system uses a single point of light, and even changing it around the time of day, it just moves that point of light. So you just get sort of the simple shadows, hard edges. So you've got, just that setting there. Now, if we look at some of the different options here, now the first one I'm going to look at is the physical sky option. Now, this takes the SketchUp shadow settings and actually enhances it. Now, we saw subtle change there, just saw a little bit more color come into the render here. It's just a little more vibrant. But if I change the time of day to sort of early morning here, not only do we get softer shadows, we actually get a color change happening as well. Now again, if I go to the end of the day, we get the longer shadows there, but the color of the light actually becomes different. Now, I'm just rendering the SketchUp background at the moment, which is just our blue standard background that we've got in my SketchUp model. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to render my lighting environment. So I'm going to render this physical sky. And there we go. We can now see the physical sky, and the background matches our render. Now this is an important part of rendering because ideally, if you do want to see your background, it really wants to match your render. And this is something we're going to have a look at as we go through, looking at custom backgrounds and sort of matching those as well. So if I now change the time of day and I go back again to sort of early morning, we can see sort of our sky here. Now what I can do, if I actually rotate around my model here, and we'll just move that down so I can actually see the sky. The reason why our sun is a little bit different and we're getting the softer shadows and the different lighting effects is we're actually creating this sky with the haze, but we're also creating a sun. So instead of single point of light, which the SketchUp sunlight system uses, we actually have a sun. Now if I turn my exposure down here and turn that down sort of lower, I should be able to find the sun. There it is. So the sun, and it's set to sort of a decent brightness as well. So that's why we're getting the softer shadows, because of the position, because of the controls of the actual sun in the render. So there we go. We can't actually see the sun now. We're getting the haze there. So the haze is then creating those softer shadows. So it's a more powerful way of working. With the SketchUp shadow system. So, it does take it that sort of step further. Now, if I just go back here to shadows, so, it's obviously reset back down to the position because I've gone back to that scene. But that is, one of the options, and you have got that control there. Now, the other options we do have in our lighting, and we've got sort of a preset lighting and also moof. Now preset and moof, these are actually the same things within SketchUp. Within Shaderlight. These are HDR images, and this stands for high dynamic range. Now again, if I go to my preset here and we've got business park daytime, or if I choose golf course evening. Now really, what I would say, looking at these, the names like Business Park and Golf Course and London Morning, really you want to focus on the last bits here, daytime, evening, morning. These are when these images were actually taken. And these are 360-degree images. So we're now inside this model here and inside the photo. And we can actually see that, our image here, and we can prove that we're actually on a golf course because we've now got a giant golf buggy behind our house there. But if I come down here, again, we can see in the sky here, so we've got sort of the bright area of sky. We know the sun's coming from that angle. But when this image was actually taken, this was sort of like a winter sun, so, sort of an evening winter sun. So very low sun, and again if I turn the exposure down, not only do you actually start to see the sun, but you can see the background image has more detail in it that you couldn't see before. The HDR image not only contains the lighting information, it's actually at multiple exposures as well. So if I turn my exposure up, we then get overexposed background here, and again turn it down, we start getting more detail, so we can actually see some of the cloud patterns that were in the sky when this image was taken that you can't see at the standard 0, which a normal photo would look like. So there's a lot more information going on in there when you use one of these environments. Now the good thing about using one of these environments as well is actually that you're putting your image in that environment, so you're setting up reflections as well. Now if I have a look in my glass doors here, now I can see now I've got the environment actually reflecting in the glass door. So this is something, again, we do get asked on support that people say, well, they use SketchUp Sunlight and the glass doesn't look realistic. Now the reason for this is if you're using SketchUp Sunlight and you're using the lighting environment, you've got a completely plain environment, so there's nothing to actually reflect. So this is why the glass looks very flat, there's nothing going on, because in the SketchUp environment there isn't actually anything happening. Now the MOOF images, as I mentioned, they're actually the same as the preset images, but they've just got different, different options. And again, rather than focusing on like Tenerife and Spain and New Zealand, think about the lighting that you have. So we have a sunrise, a dawn, sunlit lawn, high desert sun, overcast, cloudy. So we've got different lighting environments for you to use for your image. So if I do choose this sort of sunlit lawns here, we're not going to see the sun reflecting, but we're starting to see some of the background, some of the clouds, and just getting that detail in the glass there. Now my glass is, yes, it's reflective, but again, another question that we get asked is like, well, why can't I see the inside of the house? Now this is what would happen in real life is, you're working outside here, the sun's very bright, yet inside your house it's very dark. Now your eyes can compensate for this, but if you took a photo of your house, this is what you would see. Now, we can get around this, we can put some lights inside, or we can actually make the glass a little bit lighter as well. If I actually have a look at the glass material, using the material editor here, there we go, let's just move that from behind Shaderlight. And using the glass material, I can brighten it up and it will actually make it slightly more transparent. But like I said, the house is actually very dark inside, so if we zoom right in here, we are going to see a little bit more. We can actually start to see a little bit of light coming in the room. Not a great deal, to be honest, but that is something that does actually affect the sort of the effect of glass as well. So that's something to think about when you have got lights, and we'll we can put a light in there when we look at sort of the different lighting. Now, as we've seen, when we're using the environment and in our Shaderlight settings here, that our background is the lighting environment, we've got the 360-degree image. Now, the 360-degree image, I just come out of the hedge there, it's great. You've got the reflections, you've got the information, but because it's used as your environment, you don't always have the contrast, you don't always have the sort of level of setup that you would have from, say, like a photo or something like that. So what I would recommend is combining your lighting options with a background image. So if I choose a custom background here, and at the moment it's gone black because I haven't got a background here, and you can just choose a photo straight from your cell phone, straight from a camera. So this could be at a customer's site, which is sort of the really powerful part of this. And you can place that photo in the background here. Now, this is what I was saying earlier about your render really should think about matching your background. So my render here, I've got very bright sun, I've got a hard shadow from above. That's not what's happening in my background here. It's slightly overcast, there's no real bright sun, so I can start to look at maybe the sort of overcast or the cloudy options in my lighting here. So that then sort of balances a little bit more. Or I could go to one of my presets here, so business park daytime, I know that's quite a bright sun. Perhaps the golf course evening again, there we go. So you can almost see straight away, your eyes are very clever, that now is matching very in similar lights. And that's one of the things that really does make a great deal of difference with your render. As soon as you put that sort of background image in, it's just matching that lighting. Now, one thing I will say, and don't get me wrong, I'm not giving the SketchUp Sunlight a hard time, but you're really going to struggle to match a background image with SketchUp Sunlight purely because of those hard, unrealistic edges. So, you have got that ability to combine the two there. So, that does help out a lot sort of with working with those lighting options there. Now, there are some questions coming in. I didn't mention at the beginning that you know, if you ask questions in the question box, you know, we're answering them as we can, or you know, if we can sort of incorporate them in, we will. So you know, if there are questions, ask away. So okay, so yeah, so with the background image there, just the combination with matching, you know, your render there. Now, something else, and I would always say as well, materials. You know, materials always are something that you know, really worthwhile having a look at, because particularly with this roof tile here. Now, this is quite a good roof tile, but again, your eyes are the things that, you know, really are telling you that something's not quite right there. And what happens with tiling a texture is your eye will focus on a detail and it will recognize that that is actually a pattern. Now, I can see that there's a bright tile here surrounded by sort of these dark tiles, and I can see those tiled over and over again. So straight away, and the further you get away, the actual, you know, the more it can be noticeable. And, you know, because you then even start getting sort of patterning, which you would never see ultimately in real life. So, you know, we're getting sort of the lines, the patterns. So, you know, working with different textures, again, the SketchUp textures, they're good to, you know, good to get you started, and a lot of them are fine, but you can see that how small the actual tile of roofing is. Now, the website that I personally use, I use CG Textures, and now, like I said, this is just what I personally use. I'm not, we're not affiliated with them in any way or form, but cgtextures.com, they've got thousands and thousands of textures designed to actually work with computer graphics. So if I say, you know, roof tiles, yeah, there's quite a few different roof tiles there now. If I just minimize that, you know, we've got larger tiles, and you'll see the tiling. So that's a very similar roof tile that I've got on the roof there, but that, to be honest, would probably be most of the roof of the house, and you certainly wouldn't see the patterning there. So, you know, useful website, and they do have membership options, but there is a free account option. The only reason they have the membership even is just so people don't link to their website and download gigs of data. You know, so they're just keeping control on that. But, you know, it's you certainly don't sort of get spammed from them. So, you know, I've been a member on there for sort of a number of years now. Okay. So also we mentioned when rendering exteriors using Replace Me. Now the Replace Me function, this is something really sort of useful that we've incorporated. And again, if I go into our components menu here, and I actually search for Shaderlight Library, what we'll see, we've created a library of components here, and we've got some light fixtures, and we've got these Replace Me components. Now we've got Replace Me trees and people. So if I just pull up one of the trees here, and if I choose a particular tree, again, right, so we'll have this this American holly bush here. So if I bring that in, and I'm going to put that in the corner of the garden here that's nicely prepared. And what this will do is, in SketchUp, it's placed this placeholder. Now, the placeholder is just a Face Me component. So it's just a simple image that, you know, is just facing in the right direction. But as you saw, it then downloaded some information. What this actually did is it contacted a cloud server, and it downloaded the full 3D model. And that's what we're seeing in the render window, but SketchUp is now only having to deal with this placeholder. Now if I look at this from above here, we can see, there we go, we've just got the 2D image, so we can just see the top of it, but quite happily in our window we can see that rendering in full 3D. And I can move that move that around, get that sort of in the correct position that I want. But what you can also do is you can scale it. So, you know, if we only wanted a really small tree there in the corner, it scales happily as well. Now, also, if I copy it, so, you know, we just control and select another one of those, we put one of those trees in there. Once we've placed the second tree, again, we get the 3D render quite happy there. But in the placeholder, and it's slightly difficult to see when the when sort of the soil texture is there, but you can see a blue arrow on the floor there. Now this is actually what direction the tree is facing. So if I rotate that, we can now see the blue arrow is there we go. It's just facing us there. There we are. Now I know this is subtle, but if you have 10 trees in a row, you get the same effect that we were talking about on the roof tiles of patterning. That, you know, your eye would then say, well, hang on, that's just the same tree over and over again. And that's certainly what you see when you have face me components. So just by rotating it, that will then look different. I can just slightly shrink it. And again, it's just enough of a detail to say, well, okay, that's now not the same tree. So, you know, you then create more realistic. And also, the thing is with the SketchUp window is it's only having to deal with the two face me components, whereas in Shaderlight it can render more and more of the trees. Now, you know, we've run multiple tests with this, and on the 3D warehouse there's a particular model of a sports car. Now SketchUp can work with one of them, but if you want to edit it, it takes I think about 10 minutes. Two of them, SketchUp really begins to struggle with, and we've created renders with 1,000 of the cars using Replace Me. So, you know, it's quite a powerful feature, and you know, gives you a lot more power. Now, okay, we've got trees and people that we put in the component library that I mentioned about. So, you know, there's our trees and people. But if you've got your own models, you know, you can work with these as well. And in SketchUp, if I go into my plugins and Shaderlight for SketchUp, and I can go into the Replace Me creator, and what I can do is say, well, I would like this component here, which just simple box, and I would like that to be a Replace Me component, and then I can browse to a particular image. So I'm going to choose this wicker chair here. Now what this is doing is it's basically saying that this box in SketchUp I would like to render as the other model on my computer. So it can be your own models as well, as I mentioned. So, you know, this really is sort of quite a sort of a powerful way of working. Now what's just happening at the moment, if I wait for that to respond, is Shaderlight is now getting all the information from SketchUp. So, you know, SketchUp is saying not responding because it's currently sending the information. So Shaderlight's rendering away here. We're just waiting for SketchUp to just sort of catch up with us for a second. And hopefully any minute that box will appear as a chair. Okay, so there we go. SketchUp's back. We've now got a chair. So if I just rotate this round again, I can get my chair to be where I want it, facing the pool, and you know, so we can just get a more detailed model there, sort of working with that. So yeah, you know, think about the Replace Me. It is a really good feature working with sort of trees and you know, complicated sort of models there, and yeah, it can give you sort of a lot more sort of power ultimately working. If you're finding sort of SketchUp taking, you know, can take a bit of a hit with sort of the controls and with your model. So now what I'm going to look at, and again this is probably the most popular question, and again we have covered this on webinars, but you know, there are a lot of new names coming to this webinar, so it's just worth looking at, is rendering a nighttime environment. So what you want to do now, nighttime HDRs are available, but they're very sort of far and few between, because ultimately there's not a lot of detail going on in them. So you can create a custom lighting environment, and you can then actually use your own image. Now what I'm going to use this image here that I've created called Night Sky. Now if I just go into large icons here, we can see a preview, and we can see it's not very exciting here. It's a very dark blue 100 by 100 pixel square JPEG. So if I use this, now if you think about this, I've now basically put this all around my model. So I've got this dark blue light, and that's now what's lighting the scene. So that's just with the JPEG. Now this is the only time that I would use a JPEG as your lighting environment. JPEGs, they don't contain the lighting environment that HDRs do. From white to black with a JPEG, it's 254 stages, whereas with a HDR, it's about 14 million. So you can imagine there's a lot of difference there. So don't use a JPEG as your lighting environment, other than, you know, for a plain color or, you know, nighttime in this one. I'm going to choose a custom background, and I've just got an evening photo here. Now we can't see a great deal of detail in my little preview there, but if I bring it in here, we can start to see it in. Now it's really overexposed at the moment, and so is the house here as well. So I can turn down the exposure here. Now our auto exposure, which I've got turned on, basically tries to balance your model to look like a standard photo. So if I turn that down there, so there we go, it's a lot darker, and we can now start to see some details in my background here, so, you know, with the moon there. And again, I can turn the background brightness down if I want to as well. So I can really get the feel for exactly what I'm after. So, you know, if we just want that sort of darker feel, and we've got the control there. So, you know, just a completely different way of working, but just that dark blue JPEG and the background, turning down sort of my my environment exposure, and you know, we've got the controls. And as I mentioned, you know, we said about our sort of model here. So if I go into the Shaderlight library again, and we've got some lighting fixtures that are all set up and ready to go, and these actually contain all the lighting information as well. So if I choose this particular light, and you know, this light, these are, you know, these are real life lights that you can actually buy from Visa Lighting. So you know, and we've set them up so they will snap correctly to the faces. So there we go. So I'm going to put one by the wall there, and again, you know, I can just place another one, and we can see in our render we're really getting, you know, the lighting in there, and then starting to see you know, the texture in the brick, the bump map that we've got. But we're not going to cover bump map just in this one. What I would recommend is have a look at some of the other videos that we've got, you know, options in there. Now I did mention lighting on the interior as well. So what I'm going to quickly finish with is a very simple interior. As we can see, I'm just going to put a point light inside here. And that's just placing that. So there we go. I'm just going to move it down so it's just away from the ceiling, because I want to get a little bit of sort of glow on the ceiling. So there we go. And if I come outside again, so just a little detail like that, immediately now it looks like, all right, there's not a lot going on inside this pure white house with no furniture, but you know, we've now got a light on it. It just adds a lot more life to your render, and you know, with those lights there. So, you know, we've covered a lot there, but just thinking, you know, about those exterior lighting options, and you know, creating your exterior renders.